Jumping right into the next segment of the show, talking about mandatory minicamp a little bit more. And we already talked about some storylines with some of the teams that began their mandatory minicamp this week. 22 other teams, to be exact, began their minicamps this week on Monday and or Tuesday. And now we can sort of dive into who's there and who's not. All the teams basically have gone through this process, but some of them are still missing some of their most crucial pieces to this team building, this chemistry, learning the system, maybe some new systems that are incorporated into these teams heading into 2024. So, who is there? Who is absent from the mandatory minicamp? There is a good number of prominent players that were in contention of being there or not. So, to start off with the wide receivers, a couple in Cincinnati that were on watch to be there or not. The first one we have is Jamar Chase. He was actually present for the mandatory minicamp. He was eligible for an extension this offseason, and there were some questions if he was going to be there or not. Was he going to apply a little bit more pressure to the Bengals to try and give him an extension? He is only eligible to get an extension this offseason. He gained that eligibility this year. The Cincinnati Bengals aren't up against the clock here. They're not really running out of time. They still have an extended period of time before Jamar Chase is on the final year of his rookie contract. So they don't really have too much incentive to get it done, but there was still that little bit of doubt. But all in all, he was present. He was there this week and has been this week for the Cincinnati Bengals. On the other side of it, T. Higgins, his wide receiver partner in that room, he was not present, and he still is yet to sign his franchise tag with the team. He still remains the only franchise tag player this year to not receive a long-term extension with his team. And, that obviously makes you feel a certain type of way about it. If you're the only guy still to not receive that extension, T. Higgins, I'm sure, feels a certain way about it, still feels a little bit salty about it, that unfortunately for him, the situation is how it is. The Bengals already gave Joe Burrow the highest earning contract in the NFL to a quarterback, and now Jamar Chase is projected to be among one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. So you can't have two wide receivers and a quarterback among the league leaders at their respective positions for how much money they make. That's the sad reality, if you're a Bengals fan, I guess, of the matter. T. Higgins is very capable of, I think, earning probably 26, at least $27 million per year based on what he's done so far. I think he could be a number one receiver somewhere. Right away, the Commanders, a team like that jumps out. Maybe the Jaguars also after losing Calvin Ridley. The Bills, why not the Bills? They're needing some more wide receiver help. I'm sure that wouldn't help them. He is very capable of earning that money, but it most likely won't be with the Bengals. And with him being franchise tag and all, he isn't subject to fines because he technically isn't a part of the Bengals because he hasn't signed that franchise tag. So he won't be getting fined. So this really made the decision a lot easier for him. Then next on the list, you have Tristan Wirfs, giving the offensive linemen a bit of a shout out here. They're very crucial to the success of a lot of offenses. Tristan Wirfs, he was present at mandatory minicamp. He is on the fifth year option contract year of his rookie deal because he was selected in the first round, and now it is the final year using that fifth year option this year to pay him for 2024. The Buccaneers are up against it a little bit, but recent reports from the Buccaneers and just anybody around that situation would say that the vibes around this negotiation process is going pretty positively. There is a good feeling that Wirfs and the Buccaneers agreed to a contract extension probably before training camp or at some point throughout training camp. Not one of the situations that I'm too worried about, but, he was in doubt. Was he going to show up or not? He was present, and I expect the deal to be worked out with him in no time. Then, one of the more crucial ones, and one of the more confusing ones as well, you have Haasan Reddick. He was not present at the New York Jets mandatory minicamp this week. He is entering a contract year, a contract that he signed with the Philadelphia Eagles, but since he was traded there, obviously the Jets take up that last year of his contract, and he is looking for a raise according to multiple sources around the situation. It is a contract year for him, so he is looking to get a little bit more bang for his buck, and based on his production, I would probably think he's in the right here, but it is just a weird situation because he wasn't there for the voluntary portion of the offseason. Then you get into this mandatory part, and with the Jets, I'm not really getting a good vibe, a good feeling from them because they have too many players coming in and out, or too many players not being there all at the same time and getting an extensive amount of reps with all of them being there and just building that chemistry. I'm going to get to Aaron Rodgers in a second, but he adds to the list. Haasan Reddick adds to the list on that defensive side of the ball. The offensive line is still getting pieced together. I'm not sure if any of them or all of that group has been present all together for an extensive period throughout this offseason, so that's something else to watch out. And Haasan Reddick could arguably be their most talented pass rusher, and to have him not show up, I think, is pretty alarming. So it'll be a situation to watch out the rest of this offseason if the Jets and Reddick can agree to an extension. Then you have Courtland Sutton, one of the ones that isn't too alarming just because he was holding out a little bit for the voluntary parts, but other than that, he is showing up now for the mandatory portion of this offseason, and he has said that he wants to continue being a Denver Bronco, but he is also looking for a pay raise with how crazy the wide receiver market has been and how flattering the contracts have been to these wide receivers. It's no surprise that he wants to get a little bit more compensation for what he means to this team. Again, I side with the player here. It makes sense that he wants a raise, but will the Broncos do it? They're still very much handicapped with the Russell Wilson, obviously, salary cap deficiencies that they're having to deal with. So whether that gets worked out, it'll all drag into training camp, but it is a good sign that he is there. He'll probably be there for training camp, so it isn't something that I'm too fussed about. Then you have Marshon Lattimore again, another one that was a candidate to be traded, but he was present at mandatory minicamp, and that whole situation seems to have been ironed out, and there really isn't no ill feelings there between the Saints and Marshon Lattimore. Then another one that isn't too grave of a situation, Matthew Judon. He was present. He is looking for a raise also. He is scheduled to make $6.5 million in 2024 for the Patriots' most impactful pass rusher. You'd think he'd be making more compared to all the other pass rushers and what they're making on their contracts. So Matthew Judon was there, was present, but he is still looking for a pay raise. Then you have Tua Tagovailoa on the 5th year and final year of his rookie contract. Surprised a lot of people by showing up to mandatory minicamp. If I was Tua, I probably wouldn't have shown up, but it is a delicate situation because Tua doesn't have too much leverage right now in this situation. It's not like he has produced back-to-back years where he has been very, very good. Only last year was the real, true season that he put up the numbers and was healthy enough to make the Dolphins think and really contemplate their decision on whether or not they want to extend him. I guess he has the recency bias, or being a prisoner of the moment. You would say the situation is leaning towards Tua's side, but you have to take all the factors into consideration here. And Tua was present, and whether a deal gets worked out, I think it's still pretty much 50-50, 60-40 up until this point. So that's that with the Dolphins. Then you have Ceedee Lamb, obviously still not present, is going to play this last year in 2024 on his 5th-year option. So whether or not he shows up to training camp will be very fascinating to see. On that same side, Micah Parsons just became eligible this year for an extension, so he was present after being absent the entire offseason. He shows up to the mandatory minicamp. He was there. He is signed through 2025, so there is a lot of time left with Micah Parsons, but there was a little bit of doubt with the Cowboys and whether Micah would show up, but at the end of the day, he showed up and was present. Then you have Tyreek Hill, who was present, still looking for a pay raise after a lot of receivers got paid right after him, so it is logical that he wants more money. That was a little bit of doubt, but he was present. And then Brandon Ayuk still absent from the 49ers. I don't think a deal is going to get done, but with Brandon Ayuk, it's still, I guess, up in the air for some people. He wasn't present. He's also another one that will be on that 5th-year deal for the 49ers. I expect him to move on. I think the 49ers, over this period that they're not going to be with everybody, there's going to be a little bit of break here. I think they'll finally come to the realization that this just isn't trending in the right direction. So that's that with Ayuk not present, subject to I think around $100,000 worth of fines for missing all 3 days. And then the last one was Christian McCaffrey, but he just got paid. He was obviously present. So he's all in all settled there with the 49ers. But to answer the question, whose absence is most alarming, I would probably say Haasan Reddick. Haasan Reddick, just because the Jets have so much pressure on them. The Jets have a lot riding on this season. Aaron Rodgers has said it, and I think everybody in that building pretty much agrees with him that this year a lot depends on how they do. They're going to be in the national eye for the most part in the first half of the year. So everyone's going to be looking at them. They're going to be talked about probably every day for the first part of the season. So there's going to be a lot of critics, everybody nitpicking at everything they do. And for Haasan Reddick to not be there up until this point at all, and for him to be a prominent figure in this defense come 2024 and when it actually starts, I think you need this time to learn all this stuff, learn the system, and learn the scheme and everything. So for him, this is valuable time that he's missing. Of course, you want to get paid and you want to get compensated for everything you do, but as a team, for the Jets to drag this on a little bit, I think could cost them in the end. And hopefully he comes back sooner rather than later, because this Jets team, again, a lot of pressure on them, and they can't afford to have all these lingering things that just takes away from the actual game of football and how they perform. They dealt with all the distractions last year. They want to get away from that, and they have a good team. It would be a shame again to see this season with so much expectations be derailed by silly things off of the field that really have nothing to do with football. But those are who were in question heading into mandatory minicamp. A lot of absences, but a lot of people present despite their contract situations. Let me know what you guys think of those situations. Do you guys think it'll all be resolved with some of them? Do you guys feel like some that weren't present are probably not going to be present in training camp? Leave your guys' thoughts in the comments section of this video. But we will head to another break, and when we come back, a couple more stories to talk about, focusing in on the Tennessee Titans and their new identity they're embracing with their new defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. He's bringing a new identity to the Tennessee Titans. I'm a big fan of it, so I'll get into that. Plus, Micah Parsons touches on his baseball playing abilities. In a recent interview, he was asked about how many hits he would get in a 162-game season. He gave a pretty surprising answer. I'll get into it, and I'll reveal that once we come back from this break. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.